Hello, my name's Anthony from Bolt Mortgages, and this is the ultimate guide to first-time buyers buying their first home. If you want to find out more details about the house buying process and you're looking at buying your first property over the next 12 months, press like and subscribe to stay tuned for all of the most recent tips. So how's the mortgage process different for a first-time buyer? So being a first-time buyer, you are in a much better position compared to someone that's looking at selling their home. So when you're looking at making offers on properties and speaking to estate agents, if you're making an offer on a property and the offer you've made is the same as somebody that still needs to sell their house, just due to the fact that you're a first-time buyer and you have no chain, it makes your offer look a lot more attractive compared to someone that still needs to sell their house. Also, if you're looking at buying your first home, one of the massive benefits that you've got is that you don't need to pay anywhere near as much stamp duty as someone who is looking at selling. You don't actually pay anything for your stamp duty, up to £425,000, and anything after that you then charge 5% on. But as a whole, the overall process in regards to applying for a mortgage and buying a property, if you're a first-time buyer or a home mover, is very similar. The only difference being you've just got a few advantages in regards to lower fees, and also the fact you can move a lot quicker puts you in a much better position when you're offering compared to people who are looking at selling their house. So what is an agreement in principle? So if we start right at the beginning of your journey when you're looking at buying your first house, you need to get your agreement in principle sorted out before you go out and start looking at properties. But what exactly is an agreement in principle? So an agreement in principle is a certificate that you get from your lender that will prove that you've been pre-approved for your mortgage, and it will let you know how much you can borrow, and you have a certificate so when you're making offers on properties, it puts you in a much better position compared to someone that's got no proof their mortgage has been agreed. The reason it's also beneficial for yourself to get the agreement in principle done up front is a lot of people will be looking at properties that are way outside of their budget. So you'd be spending your evenings looking at properties, falling in love with houses, only to find out your budget is nowhere near the amount you can actually offer. And on the flip side of that, you may be looking at properties that may only have 2 bedrooms when you need a 3 bed because you're not 100% sure you can afford the mortgage or that your mortgage will be approved. Getting that agreement in principle up front will put you in a much better position because you know exactly how much you can go for, so you're not looking at properties that are too small, and you're also not looking at properties that are just outside of your budget. On top of that, having the agreement in principle when you're making an offer on a property puts you in a much better position compared to somebody that hasn't. The main reason being is, let's say you're selling your house and you've got option one, who has not spoken to a mortgage advisor, offers £300,000, hasn't got their solicitor in place, and has no proof they can actually get the financing for the property. Option two is someone that makes £300,000 as an offer as well. However, they have got an agreement in principle in place, explaining exactly how much they can get agreed up to. They've got their proof of deposit in place, and they also have a solicitor. If you're selling your house, which offer would you likely accept? An agreement in principle is also known as a decision in principle or mortgage in principle. And although it will give you a certificate explaining how much you can borrow, this isn't a mortgage offer, and this can potentially change when you submit the application, depending on how your income fluctuates and how the lender's underwriter assesses the case. Mortgage in principles tend to last for 3 months. After the 3-month period expires, you then need to get a new agreement in principle in place. And if your income fluctuates with bonuses, commission or overtime, although you get the agreement in principle now, if your next 2 months' pay slips have fluctuated slightly, when you go to apply for the mortgage, the amount you can borrow will have also fluctuated alongside that. So how much can you borrow as a first-time buyer? This varies massively on so many different factors, but as a general rule of thumb, you can borrow 4.5 times the household income as to who's applying for the mortgage. There are, however, other lenders out there that, as a first-time buyer, if you earn over a certain amount of income, you can get up to 5.5 times your salary, which will make a huge difference as to how much it is that you can borrow. If you want to be able to qualify for the higher income multiples with a lot of lenders, although 4.5 is the standard, if you have a bigger deposit, usually 15%, and you earn over a certain amount of income, with a lot of lenders it's 50,000 plus, there are lenders out there that can massively increase how much you can borrow. So it's important you do your research or speak to a financial professional who'll be able to maximise your budget when you're out looking at your properties. So what deposit is needed for a first-time buyer? As a first-time buyer, you need a bare minimum deposit of 5%. However, the lower deposit you've got, the less the lenders will lend you, and the higher the interest rates are that you'll be charged. The reason the interest rates are a lot higher when you have a 5% deposit is every decision the banks make are based on if they have to repossess the property from yourself, can they earn their money back? So if you buy a property, for example, that's worth £200,000 and you put down a 5% deposit, which is 10,000, you've borrowed £190,000. If the property market decreases by 10% and the lender needs to repossess the property from yourself, they've instantly lost money because the house is worth nowhere near the amount they've actually lent you. And because they've taken a higher risk, they do tend to charge you a higher interest rate. And this also goes on the flip side. If you have a bigger deposit, because there's a lower chance of the lenders losing money if they ever have to repossess the property, you do qualify for cheaper interest rates at that point. We've also created a first-time buyer email list where we're giving weekly educational videos and content to help educate and inspire you to get on a property ladder. We've got the link in the description, sign up now. So as a first-time buyer, how can you improve your credit score to make the application process go through as smooth as possible? And to start off with, if you have got bad credit, it's not all doom and gloom. There are still lenders out there that can lend to you, but you tend to need a bigger deposit, usually in the region of 15%. The older the bad credit is, the less impact it has on your file. However, if you do have to go with an impaired credit lender, the interest rates are usually more than your standard high street lender and someone with good credit. So how exactly can you increase your credit score? First of all, the most important part is making sure you're keeping up with payments. So if you haven't done already, make sure everything that you've got for your financial commitments, credit cards, loans, car hire, are all set up on a direct debit so you don't miss any payments at all. Another quick fire win to increase your credit score is to get yourself registered on the electoral roll. You can do this by going to the government website, entering your details, and this can have a quick increase in your score just by filling out one form online. When you're applying for a mortgage, it's also worth checking your credit score way in advance before you actually making your application. We speak to a lot of people who've got issues on their credit report they didn't even realise existed, such as phone contracts not being cancelled properly, gas and utility bills not being cancelled properly. So it's always worth checking your credit score up front to see if there's anything on there that shouldn't be that you can make amendments for. We advise and use a system called Check My File. And rather than looking at each credit report system individually, such as Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, and having to pay for 3 separate reports, Check My File puts all of these into one easy to read place. So when you're going through the process, you can look at what credit reporting system has what bits of information about yourself, and there can also be discrepancies where some lenders, for example, will only check Equifax, some lenders will only check Experian, and if your report is higher on one than the other, it may also increase your chances of getting agreed for your mortgage. We've got a link in our bio as to how to sign up to Check My File. It's free for the first 30 days and can be cancelled at any time, and after that it's $14.99 a month. So what other help is available for first-time buyers? So the first major benefit is that you do not pay stamp duty up to £425,000 at the time of this video. However, this can change at any point as the government has been chopping and changing that quite frequently recently. Another scheme, if you just can't get the affordability amount to buy the property that you need, is a shared ownership scheme. This isn't just available for first-time buyers. However, it can be a quite handy step that rather than buying a property 100% yourself, to get yourself out of rented and still own a share of a property. The way the shared ownership scheme works is if you have a property, for example, that's worth £200,000 and you own 50% of that, you own £100,000 of that property, and when you put down your deposit, you only need 5% of your share. So it changes the deposit to a much lower amount compared to buying a full property. What you then do for the other half of the property that you do not own, you pay a housing association rent throughout the process. And just because you own 50% of the property now, doesn't mean it's going to be like that forever. As your income increases, you save more deposit, or you even earn more equity by the house price increasing, you can remortgage and ask to buy an additional share of the property until you eventually own it 100%. One of the questions we get asked a lot when people are going down the shared ownership route is, are these properties okay for resale in the future? And although not everybody's looking for a shared ownership property, on our experience and with the estate agents that we work with, as soon as a shared ownership property goes on the market, due to the fact there's so many people out there that want to get out of rented but can't afford 100% of the property, these have always had queues out the door of people looking at buying them. Another option that we've got, if the affordability just isn't there for yourself, is something known as a joint borrower sole proprietor mortgage. And this is in theory a guarantor mortgage where your parents or friends or family can go on a mortgage alongside yourself. One of the benefits of doing it this way, rather than just adding them to the mortgage, is on the title deed, it's just your name on the property, but on the mortgage, it'd be you and the guarantor's name. Doing it this way means even if they own a property themselves, you still qualify for the first-time buyer stamp duty relief. The person who's going on the mortgage has no right to the property and owns no equity in that. However, they are still liable to make the payments if you do not keep up with your monthly mortgage payments. And what they would look at is look at your income and assess your details, and the guarantor, they'd also do the same. If they've got a mortgage at the moment, however, it might slightly reduce the amount you can borrow, but having those two people on the mortgage usually means you can borrow more compared to just doing it on your own. So when you're buying your first house, what fees are involved? So the fees involved when you're looking at buying your first property, first one is your solicitors. Having a good solicitor in place makes all the difference in making or breaking this process for yourself. So you can go online and get cheap solicitors in the region of about £1,000 to £1,200. But cheap isn't always better. Sometimes it's worth going with a solicitor that your mortgage advisor or estate agents recommends. It might be £200 to £300 more expensive. However, you pay for what you get. Having a solicitor that's going to respond to your emails, speak to the seller's solicitor promptly is so important when you're going through this particular process. Because if they're not responding, it can drag the process out. And we've also had deals fall through in the past due to the solicitor not doing their part of the process properly. So a good solicitor should really cost you in the region of £1,400 to £1,800, depending on whether it's a freehold or leasehold property, as leasehold's more expensive, and also the value of the property that you're going through. Another fee that's involved for a first-time buyer is stamp duty. Lucky enough, up to £425,000, there's no charge for stamp duty. From 425 to 625, you then charged 5% of that amount between it. And then from 625 to 925, you charge 8% on anything over that. So from 425 to 925, you then charge 5% of anything in between that bracket. Another fee you have to cover for is your valuation fees. A lot of lenders give you a free basic mortgage valuation. Some will charge you up to £500 depending on the lender you've gone with. Your basic valuation will cover the value of the property and if there's any major issues, and that is the extent of it. You can then go through and get a home buyer's report, which usually costs you in the region of £500 to £600. And with this, they go for a traffic light system where they give you red, amber, green. Green means that part of the property is fine. Amber means it might need a bit of work. Red means it could use urgent work as soon as you move in. These aren't mandatory, however, with it being one of the most expensive things that you'll buy, it might be worth doing this because it can flag up things that the lender wouldn't pick up just doing the basic mortgage valuation. On top of that, you've then got your application fee with the lender. So the lenders tend to charge you an application fee in the region of £999. And with this particular fee, it can be known as product fee, application fee, but you get two options. You can pay that up front, or you can add it to the mortgage and you charge interest over the long run, which can cost you more in the long run, but it gives you more money now. However, not all mortgage products come with that. So what tends to happen, the lender will usually offer you two variances: a interest rate, which is slightly higher with no product fee, or one with a low interest rate with a product fee attached. It's then down to your mortgage advisor to find out your situation and figure out which will be cheaper for you over the term of your fixed rate mortgage. So this has been the ultimate guide to buying your first home. If you've got any further questions, don't forget to leave a comment and we can answer each and every one of them for you. And we've also got a link in our description for our free email list, giving you weekly hints and tips as to how to get on the property ladder and make sure you're doing it without making any mistakes.